Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, taking a fun and interesting video for you guys today because I've been seeing this question in the comments a lot recently, especially now that the Neo Geo AES Plus has been announced. Why are retro games so expensive? And the honest answer is it is an actual combination of a lot of different factors. We're going to be getting into each and every one of them in this video. But I totally agree with you guys. The pricing of retro games has absolutely gone insane since like 2020. And it's not like they started off cheap, but the prices you're seeing for even some of the most common popular games out there right now are absolutely eye-wateringly high. Now, in some instances, stuff has just always been expensive and will remain expensive. And when people ask if the Neo Geo AES Plus games being reprinted will affect the value of Neo Geo AES originals, I do not think it will in any way, shape, or form, because the collectors that want these are not going to put on their shelf a reprint and say it's the same exact thing. Yes, it will be the same exact thing, but honestly, some of the prices out there are shocking right now. They are just eye-opening, showing you just how much retro gaming is making a comeback, and the prices definitely reflect that. So we're going to be going over a lot of different games from a lot of different generations and talking about why those particular ones are expensive and why retro gaming in general, the values just keep increasing. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But right now you're looking at footage of Haunting Ground on the PlayStation 2, and we'll address the price of that one a little bit later on in the video. But honestly, it just was a little bit of a fun visual gag. You absolutely want to run away from retro collecting in 2026. And unless you have more money than common sense, I would definitely just stick with software emulation where you can, because these games are absolutely insanely priced. Let's take a look at something like Metal Slug, because that's a good example of a game that's absolutely always been expensive and continues to get more expensive. And the odds are this will not be reprinted on the Neo Geo AES Plus because the rights on this situation are absolutely confusing. Atlas has a hand in this, which means Sega actually owns at least part of the Power Instinct franchise, at least is how I understand it. So I wouldn't expect this thing to actually be reprinted anytime soon. Now, I picked this game up for my personal Neo Geo collection probably like 13 or 14 years ago, and I paid $500 for it, and that absolutely would have been considered a high price back then, and trust me, I am not a rich person, especially back then. I used tip money from working at a restaurant to pick this thing up on eBay, and I have owned it ever since, and it was basically near to new old stock when I actually purchased it. Now today, the price is absolutely insane on something like Metro Melee, and you can use price charting to actually track prices, but in rare stuff like this, I feel like the prices are never quite correct, so I just go in and see what some past sales actually have done. But honestly, if you want to buy a copy of Metro Melee today, and of course, these are sale prices, not completed prices, there's a couple of copies on eBay, and you're talking about $3,500 to $4,000, and something like this copy here for $4,000 doesn't even have the little cellophane baggie that goes with the manual, and that's something that collectors actually care about. In this instance, Metro Melee is just rare, so of course it's going to be expensive because it's for a coveted system and they didn't make that many copies. But moving over to something like the original Silent Hill on PlayStation 1, basically everyone has played this game. It was not that incredibly rare back in the day. You could walk into any store and buy a copy, and still to this day on eBay, or even if you go to some private forums, you can find Silent Hill for sale all day long. It's not a situation where it is coveted because it's incredibly rare. It's coveted because it's one of the best survival horror games of all time, and it launched a franchise, and it's just one of those titles that keeps getting talked about. We see the decompilation projects almost hit 100%, and we have one PC port in development and another one planned for the future. This is just a game that holds people's imaginations and nostalgia, so when people want to play it again, they go and try to buy a copy, and nostalgia can be a very big factor when it comes to the pricing of games on the used market. So if you take a look at the prices that something like the original Silent Hill have been going for, the black label version of the game, it just keeps going up and up and up. And I'm sure a little bit of that is because we actually got the Silent Hill 2 remake, so people think to themselves, I want to play the original game if I never have. Right now, just a few days ago on May 10th, a used copy of just the disc sold for $130. That's absolutely an insane price, and that is just for the bare disc. When you actually see the condition of the bottom, you'll know it's not a good deal. Although I do remember all these game hint hotlines, I never called one. But you tell me down below, did you call one? I'd be curious. But this disc definitely does not look very good. It is definitely scratched up, and that thing went for $130. And right now, on May 10th, a complete version of the game sold for $330, and that's absolutely insane level pricing. Let's move over to something like Super Smash Bros. On Nintendo 64, because honestly, the N64 is having a resurgence in 2025 and 2026. and it's not like Super Smash Bros. Is any sort of rare game. They sold the ever-loving hell out of this thing, and there are hundreds upon hundreds, thousands of copies for sale out there, because it's a very popular game and people have nostalgia for it, especially now with analog 3D allowing you to put your cartridges in Modern Retro M64 soon. These things are just going up in price and they are coveted. This sold on May 10th for $50, and this cartridge absolutely is sun-faded and beat to ever-loving hell. I would not say it's worth $50 whatsoever. I'd buy the Japanese copy for a lot cheaper, but a complete in-box one for sale right now that just recently actually sold. This is basically $320 for a complete copy of Super Smash Bros. And that's just way too expensive in my opinion. And that really is the thing. Some games are just hugely popular, like Garou Mark of the Wolves, and even though that didn't get anywhere near the print run as something like Super Smash Bros., it is still a very popular game, so when people want the quote-unquote best Neo Geo fighting game of all time, and I would agree, they want Mark of the Wolves for their collection. And that is why it is nice that Plaion is reprinting this with SNK on the Neo Geo AES Plus. You're going to be able to play the game on quote-unquote real hardware for all of $90. Now this is one, again, I've owned for the longest time, and I barely paid anything for this thing, and honestly, it was near mint when I picked it up. And that is something, when people ask, how do I get these games? The reality is a lot of the things I show you, I've owned for 15-20 years. I have been collecting retro games just because I was always fascinated by it for probably like the last 21 or 22 years. And the price is back in like 2007, 2008 for something like Garou Mark of the Wolves. Definitely a lot cheaper than it is today, and you'll see mine even has the registration card. Now if you go over to eBay and look at the current pricing for something like a Neo Geo game, Garou Mark of the Wolves, the cheapest one that looked nice and it didn't even include the registration card is currently for sale for $3,500. Now this factor, as far as why it's so expensive, is 1, it's one of the best fighting games of all time. 2, it's for a system that people have a lot of fascination with because never got to play it. And 3, it didn't get all that many copies made. Now let's talk about rarity as far as actual quantity is concerned. This is Dead of the Brain 1 or 2 for the PC Engine CD. It is the last official game ever released for the PC Engine on HuCard or on CD that was actually licensed. Now I have owned this thing probably for like the last 12 years or so, and I paid exactly $100 for it. It was new. I actually had the cellophane on it, but because I don't actually collect games to keep them sealed for any sort of investment value, I opened it up and I played it on my PC Engine CD, which absolutely knocked a lot of the value off it back then, and even more so today. But it's one of those things, I rarely have ever sell anything out of my collection. But this is expensive because it is incredibly rare. Right now there's exactly 2 copies for sale between Yahoo Auctions Japan and eBay, and they're going for a little bit over $2,000 a pop. This is a game that, depending on what day of the week you actually look for it, you might not find a single example of it for sale anywhere unless you know private collectors like me to talk to and make an offer to. And again, I never sell anything whatsoever. I just love collecting this stuff and it's always fun to play with. But sometimes the price of a retro game is intrinsically tied to its rarity, and in Dead of the Brain's instance, that's exactly what's going on. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, sometimes the price of retro games absolutely makes no sense, and it is just a stupid kind of pricing situation. And even though this is the showroom floor demo of Super Mario 64 recreated, Super Mario 64 in general is a game that got millions upon millions upon millions of copies made. Because if you owned an N64 back in the day, you had a copy of this game. I feel like the actual attachment rate was probably almost 100%. So you would think to yourself, if a game is so incredibly common and was so successful for Nintendo, it must actually be cheap, because trust me, Super Mario 64 basically was a license for Nintendo to print money, and they printed it basically fast and furiously. And this is why sometimes the actual price of retro gaming is not tied to how many copies were made, it's tied to popularity and overall desirability. Because right now, if you go on eBay and you want to buy a loose copy or even a box copy of Super Mario 64, these things are selling for the most ridiculous prices. This is a Player's Choice edition, not even the most coveted in box. The box isn't in that nice of shape, and one of the manuals has ink and pen drawings on the back of it. But these things are selling for over 3 figures, and trust me, they are incredibly common, and that's why sometimes the price doesn't make sense. Now moving over to Hunting Ground, this is an area in which the price actually makes perfect sense, and it keeps going up and up and up. And I hate to tell people this, but I'm going to be entirely honest with you. I bought this thing used for $10. When I actually talked about it on one of the few YouTube stories I've done, it was about $350 at that point in time, and it's basically almost doubled in price since then. Now the question is, why is retro gaming getting more expensive? Sometimes it is because a game didn't get that many copies made, and it also ended up being absolutely a sleeper hidden gem that people want to experience. Haunting Ground from Capcom's exactly that. It wasn't very successful when it came out, it didn't get that many print runs, and it is, in my opinion, one of the best survival horror games from the PlayStation 2 era. And because a lot of the same team was involved with it that worked on Resident Evil, it also has that fascination as well. So this one has a combination of factors. One, it didn't do well at retail, not that many copies were made, and two, it is, in my opinion, one of the best PlayStation 2 games of all time. So people really want to own a copy of this for their shelves and play it on real hardware. And that's why you see copies of this going for over $600 now, and if they are sealed, you're talking 4 figures, not 3. I'm not saying the game is worth it, I would definitely emulate it, and like I said, I paid $10 and would never pay these prices, but sometimes the price really does quote-unquote make sense. Rarity plus popularity end up is expensive, but it's not always that way across the board. There's always different exceptions to the rule out there. But the number one answer to why retro gaming is getting so expensive is just nostalgia. People have expendable income now that they're getting older. They want to relive the golden years of their gaming histories, and they are willing to pay top dollar for the games. And as far as if there's a crash coming, I have no idea, and honestly, I don't buy these things for investments, I buy them for fun. And I am not above selling things if somebody else wants them that much more than me. My wife and I just purchased a house in Chicago, put 20% down, and with that, the closing fees and the moving fees, I sold 2 items from my collection and recouped over 100% of what we spent. And I know I am lucky to be able to do so. I just bought these things a long time ago. But why is retro gaming getting so expensive? Because nostalgia is there, people have the money, and they will willingly pay it. Sure to that, if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below, but I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.